The story of the Persians is one of remarkable ascent, a narrative of a people who emerged from the Iranian plateau to forge one of the most extensive and influential empires the ancient world had ever witnessed. Their dominion, stretching across vast swaths of the Middle East and Anatolia, left an indelible mark on the cultures, political landscapes, and administrative practices of the regions they governed. This sprawling entity, often referred to as the Achaemenid Empire after its founding dynasty, rose from relatively modest beginnings to challenge and often overcome established powers, creating a new paradigm of imperial rule. The Persians, an Indo-Iranian people, originally settled in the region known as Persis, corresponding to the modern-day Fars province in southwestern Iran. For centuries, they existed under the shadow of more dominant Mesopotamian powers and the neighboring Median Empire. The Medes, themselves an Iranian people, had established a significant kingdom by the 7th century BCE, and the Persians were initially their vassals. However, the political currents of the ancient Near East were ever shifting, and the stage was being set for a dramatic reversal of fortunes. The catalyst for this transformation arrived in the person of Cyrus, a figure who would later be known as Cyrus the Great. Ascending to the throne of Anshan, a Persian kingdom, in the mid-6th century BCE, Cyrus embarked on a series of audacious military campaigns and diplomatic maneuvers that would fundamentally reshape the geopolitical map. His initial and most crucial move was against his Median overlords. In approximately 550 BCE, Cyrus successfully revolted against the Median king Astyages, effectively unifying the Medes and Persians under his singular command. This was not merely a conquest, but an amalgamation of two closely related peoples, laying a broader foundation for future expansion. The Medes continued to play significant roles in the administration and military of the nascent empire, a testament to Cyrus's astute policy of integration rather than outright suppression. With the Median power base secured, Cyrus turned his attention westward. The kingdom of Lydia, situated in western Anatolia and renowned for its immense wealth under King Persis, was a formidable power. The Lydians controlled significant trade routes and possessed a legendary treasury. The confrontation between Cyrus and Croesus became the stuff of legend, culminating in the Persian conquest of Lydia around 547 BCE. This victory was pivotal, as it brought the entirety of Anatolia, with its Greek city-states along the Aegean coast, under Persian influence. It also provided the Persians with access to the Mediterranean, opening up new avenues for trade, cultural exchange, and further military ambitions. The conquest of Lydia was a clear signal that a new imperial force had arrived, one with the capacity to project its power far beyond its original homeland. Following the subjugation of Lydia, Cyrus the Great set his sights on an even greater prize, the Neo-Babylonian Empire. This ancient Mesopotamian power, centered on the legendary city of Babylon, controlled vast and fertile territories, including Mesopotamia itself, Syria, Phoenicia, and Palestine. The campaign against Babylon, culminating in its fall in 539 BCE, was a masterstroke of military strategy and political maneuvering. Rather than a prolonged and destructive siege, Cyrus reportedly diverted the waters of the Euphrates River, allowing his troops to enter the city through the riverbed during a festival, catching the Babylonians by surprise. The capture of Babylon was a momentous event, effectively ending millennia of Mesopotamian self-rule and incorporating its immense resources and historic prestige into the burgeoning Persian domain. Cyrus's approach to governance in the newly conquered territories, particularly Babylon, was remarkably enlightened for its time and contributed significantly to the stability of his rapidly expanding empire. He presented himself not as a foreign conqueror but as a legitimate successor to the native kings, chosen by the Babylonian chief god Marduk. This is famously documented in the Cyrus cylinder, an Akkadian cuneiform text inscribed on a clay cylinder, which describes his victory and his subsequent policies of restoring temples, repatriating displaced peoples, and respecting local customs and religions. This policy of relative tolerance and multiculturalism stood in stark contrast to the often brutal practices of earlier empires like the Assyrians. For instance, Cyrus famously permitted the Jewish people, who had been exiled to Babylon decades earlier, to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, an act that earned him a revered place in biblical accounts. This pragmatic and often benevolent approach helped to pacify conquered populations and integrate diverse cultures into a cohesive imperial structure. It fostered a sense of loyalty, or at least acquiescence, among subject peoples, reducing the likelihood of widespread rebellion. Cyrus understood that an empire built solely on force was inherently unstable. By co-opting local elites, respecting traditions, and promoting a degree of local autonomy, he laid a more durable foundation for Persian rule. His administrative innovations, though perhaps not as systematically organized as they would become under his successors, were crucial in managing the vast and heterogeneous territories he had brought under his sway. The campaigns of Cyrus the Great had, in a remarkably short period, transformed the Persians from a regional power into the masters of an empire that stretched from the Aegean Sea in the west to the Indus River in the east, and from the Caucasus Mountains in the north to the Arabian Desert in the south. His reign established the core territories and the foundational principles of the Achaemenid Empire. However, his ambition also led him to further campaigns in Central Asia against nomadic Scythian tribes, and it was during one such expedition, around 530 BCE, that this extraordinary founder met his end, reportedly dying in battle. His legacy, however, was firmly established. He was not just a conqueror, but an empire builder of vision and sagacity. The death of Cyrus the Great ushered in a period of transition and challenge for the fledgling empire. He was succeeded by his son, Cambyses II, who had been designated as heir and had even served as regent in Babylon. Cambyses inherited an immense and diverse realm, and his primary objective became the extension of Persian power into the last remaining major independent kingdom of the ancient Near East Egypt. The pharaohs of Egypt, with their ancient lineage and control over the fertile Nile Valley, represented a significant strategic and symbolic prize. In 525 BCE, Cambyses launched his carefully prepared invasion of Egypt. The Persian forces, likely bolstered by Phoenician naval power, which gave them an advantage in coastal operations and transport, clashed with the Egyptian army led by Pharaoh Psamtik III at the Battle of Pelusium in the eastern Nile Delta. The engagement was a decisive victory for the Persians. Following the battle, Cambyses advanced, capturing the ancient capital of Memphis and effectively bringing Egypt under Achaemenid control. With this conquest, the Persian Empire now encompassed the three great river valley civilizations of the ancient world: Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, though only its western fringes were fully incorporated at this stage, and Egypt. This expansion marked a significant milestone, stretching Persian dominion to its furthest southwestern extent. Cambyses' reign, however, is shrouded in some controversy, with ancient sources, particularly the Greek historian Herodotus, painting a picture of a ruler who descended into madness and tyranny following his Egyptian campaign. He is accused of various impieties against Egyptian religion, such as the alleged slaying of the sacred Apis bull and of cruel acts against his own family and court. While these accounts must be treated with caution, as they often reflect a hostile Greco-Persian perspective and may contain exaggerations or propaganda, it is plausible that Cambyses faced significant challenges in administering the newly conquered and culturally distinct land of Egypt, and his methods may have been harsh. There is also evidence from Egyptian sources that suggests a more nuanced picture, indicating that he initially attempted to legitimize his rule in the traditional pharaonic manner. During Cambyses' extended absence in Egypt, a significant crisis erupted back in the heartlands of the empire. A Magian priest named Gaumata allegedly impersonated Bardia, also known by the Greek name Smertis, Cambyses' younger brother, whom Cambyses had supposedly secretly murdered before embarking on the Egyptian campaign. This false Bardia seized the throne in 522 BCE, gaining widespread support by promising tax remissions and a cessation of military conscription. News of this usurpation reached Cambyses as he was returning from Egypt. The circumstances of Cambyses' death shortly thereafter are murky. He either died from an accidental self-inflicted wound or by suicide, leaving the empire in a state of turmoil and under the control of the impostor. This period of uncertainty and contested leadership threatened to unravel the vast empire Cyrus had so painstakingly assembled. The death of Cambyses II and the usurpation of the throne by the Magian Gaumata, posing as Bardia, plunged the Persian Empire into a period of acute crisis. The authority of the Achaemenid dynasty was directly challenged, and the very integrity of the empire hung in the balance. It was in this chaotic environment that a figure of remarkable ability and resolve emerged: Darius, a member of a collateral branch of the Achaemenid royal family. Darius had served as Cambyses' spear-bearer and was present with the army when news of the usurpation and Cambyses' subsequent death arrived. He contended that the Bardia on the throne was an impostor, and that the real Bardia had been murdered earlier by Cambyses. Recognizing the mortal threat to the Achaemenid lineage and the empire itself, Darius, with the support of 6 other prominent Persian nobles, conspired to overthrow the man they deemed a usurper. In the daring move, they traveled to a fortress in Media, where Gaumata was residing, and in September of 522 BCE succeeded in killing him. Darius then claimed the throne for himself, asserting his legitimacy through his Achaemenid ancestry, and, as he would later proclaim, by the will of the supreme Zoroastrian deity, Ahura Mazda. The most detailed account of these events, and indeed Darius's justification for his actions, comes from the monumental Behistun inscription, a multilingual relief carved on a cliff face in western Iran. This inscription, a key primary source for the period, presents Darius's version of his rise to power, framing Gaumata as a deceitful Magian who had wrongfully seized control. However, Darius's ascension did not immediately bring stability. The sudden overthrow of Gaumata, who had been popular in some quarters due to his favorable policies, combined with the preceding dynastic turmoil, triggered a wave of rebellions across the vast empire. Numerous provinces, from Babylonia and Media in the heartlands to Elam, Armenia, Parthia, and even Egypt and Sattagidea further afield, saw local leaders or pretenders rise up to challenge Persian rule and declare independence. For nearly 2 years, Darius was embroiled in a relentless series of campaigns to suppress these widespread insurrections. He personally led his armies in many of these conflicts, demonstrating considerable military skill and determination. The Behistun inscription meticulously recounts these struggles, detailing 19 significant battles fought in a single year against various rebel leaders, each of whom claimed kingship in their respective regions. Darius systematically defeated each opponent, reasserting central authority through force of arms. The scale of the unrest was immense, and the fact that Darius managed to quell all these rebellions and reunite the empire under his firm control is a testament to his military prowess, his organizational capacities, and the loyalty he was able to command from a core group of supporters. By 520 BCE, after arduous fighting, the empire was largely pacified, and Darius could finally turn his attention from internal conflict to the more complex tasks of administration, consolidation, and further expansion. His victory over the multiple rebellions effectively cemented his rule and marked the true beginning of his long and impactful reign. Having secured his throne and pacified the vast territories through military might, Darius I embarked on a series of profound administrative and organizational reforms designed to ensure the long-term stability and efficient governance of the Persian Empire. He understood that military control alone was insufficient to manage such a diverse and sprawling realm. His initiatives aimed to create a more centralized, predictable, and prosperous state, capable of effectively harnessing its immense human and material resources. These reforms would become a hallmark of Achaemenid rule and influence administrative practices in the region for centuries to come. One of Darius's most significant innovations was the systematic organization of the empire into provinces, known as satrapies. While earlier rulers had used local governors, Darius refined and expanded this system. He divided the empire into approximately 20 satrapies, each administered by a governor or satrap, who was typically a Persian or Median noble and directly responsible to the king. The satrap was the chief civil administrator in his province, responsible for collecting taxes, maintaining order, dispensing justice, and raising troops when required. To prevent the concentration of too much power in one individual's hands, Darius often appointed a separate military commander for the satrapy, and also instituted a system of royal inspectors, known as the, quote, king's eyes and ears, who made surprise visits to the provinces to report on the conduct of officials and the state of affairs. Taxation was regularized and made more systematic. Each satrapy was assessed a fixed annual tribute, payable in silver, gold, or goods in kind, based on its perceived wealth and productive capacity. This predictable revenue stream provided the central government with the resources needed to fund the army, finance extensive building projects, and maintain the imperial administration. To facilitate commerce and the payment of taxes, Darius introduced a standardized gold coin, the daric, and a silver coin, the siglos. While local coinages continued to exist, these imperial currencies promoted interregional trade and economic integration across the empire. He also worked towards standardizing weights and measures, further easing commercial transactions. Furthermore, Darius invested heavily in infrastructure to connect and control his vast domain. The most famous of these projects was the Royal Road, a well-maintained highway stretching over 2,500 kilometers from Susa in the Persian heartland to Sardis in western Anatolia. Equipped with regular staging posts and fresh horses, it enabled royal couriers to transmit messages with remarkable speed, allowing the king to communicate effectively with his distant governors. Other roads were built or improved, and Darius famously completed a canal connecting the Nile River to the Red Sea, facilitating maritime trade between Egypt, Persia, and the lands bordering the Indian Ocean. Aramaic, already a widely used lingua franca in the Near East, was adopted as an official language of the imperial administration, simplifying communication across diverse linguistic groups. These infrastructural and administrative measures were instrumental in knitting together the disparate parts of the empire into a more cohesive and manageable entity. Alongside his comprehensive administrative reforms, Darius I initiated an ambitious program of monumental construction that aimed to visually articulate the power, wealth, and grandeur of the Achaemenid Empire. These building projects served not only as administrative centers, but also as symbolic representations of the king's authority and the diverse unity of the peoples under his rule. Two of the most prominent sites associated with his reign are Susa and the magnificent new ceremonial capital he founded, Parsa, better known by its Greek name, Persepolis. At Susa, an ancient Elamite capital, Darius constructed an impressive palace complex. Inscriptions found at the site proudly detail the vast array of materials and craftsmen brought from all corners of the empire to contribute to its construction: cedarwood from Lebanon, gold from Sardis and Bactria, ivory from Ethiopia and India, and skilled artisans from Egypt, Babylonia, and Ionia. This deliberate multicultural collaboration was intended to demonstrate the reach of the empire and the king's ability to command resources and talent from across his domains. The palace at Susa served as an important administrative hub, strategically located between the Iranian plateau and the Mesopotamian lowlands. Even more iconic was Persepolis, situated in the Persian heartland of Persis. Construction began under Darius around 518 BCE and continued under his successors. Persepolis was conceived primarily as a ceremonial capital, a place for grand receptions, royal audiences, and the celebration of Nowruz, the Persian New Year, which symbolically affirmed the king's reign and the cosmic order. The site is renowned for its vast elevated platform, monumental stairways, imposing audience halls like the Apadana, and intricate relief carvings. These reliefs famously depict processions of envoys from various subject peoples of the empire: Medes, Elamites, Babylonians, Lydians, Egyptians, Indians, Scythians, and many others, each distinguished by their traditional attire and bearing tribute. These images reinforced the idea of a harmonious empire, united under the benevolent rule of the Persian king. Darius's ideology of kingship was deeply intertwined with the Zoroastrian religion, or at least its precursor forms. In his numerous inscriptions, most notably at Behistun and Persepolis, Darius repeatedly attributes his legitimacy and successes to the will of Ahura Mazda, the supreme deity. He presents himself as the chosen representative of Ahura Mazda on earth, tasked with upholding truth, Arta, and combating falsehood, Drauga. This divine mandate provided a powerful ideological justification for his rule and for the expansion and maintenance of the empire. While the Achaemenids, particularly Darius, promoted Ahura Mazda, they generally continued Cyrus's policy of religious tolerance towards the diverse faiths practiced within their territories. While consolidating and organizing his vast realm, Darius also pursued further expansion. He campaigned in the east, extending Persian control into parts of northwestern India, which became a wealthy satrapy, providing gold dust and mercenaries. More significantly for later history, he turned his attention to Europe. Around 513 BCE, Darius led a major expedition across the Danube River into Scythia, modern-day Ukraine, and southern Russia, aiming to subdue the nomadic Scythian tribes whose raids had troubled the northern frontiers. While the Scythian campaign proved challenging and ultimately inconclusive due to the Scythians' elusive tactics, it did result in the Persian annexation of Thrace and the submission of Macedon, bringing the empire's borders closer to the Greek city-states. It was these westward advances, and the subsequent Ionian revolt by Greek cities in Anatolia, that would set the stage for the prolonged and famous conflict between Persia and Greece. The expansion of Persian influence into Thrace and the Aegean brought the empire into direct contact and, eventually, conflict with the fiercely independent city-states of Greece. The initial flashpoint was the Ionian Revolt, which erupted in 499 BCE. The Greek cities along the western coast of Anatolia, which had been under Persian dominion since the conquests of Cyrus, chafed under the rule of Persian-backed tyrants and the burden of tribute and military service. Sparked by Aristogoras, the tyrant of Miletus, the revolt quickly spread throughout Ionia, gaining support from a few mainland Greek cities, notably Athens and Eretria, who sent token forces. Though the rebels achieved some early successes, including the burning of Sardis, the provincial capital of Lydia, the Persians gradually marshaled their considerable resources. After nearly 6 years of fighting, the revolt was decisively crushed by Darius's forces, culminating in the capture and destruction of Miletus in 494 BCE. Darius I, angered by the Athenian and Eretrian involvement in supporting the Ionian rebels, resolved to punish these mainland Greek cities and extend Persian authority across the Aegean. In 490 BCE, a Persian punitive expedition, commanded by Datis and Artaphernes, sailed across the Aegean, subduing islands along the way and destroying Eretria. The Persian force then landed at the Bay of Marathon, northeast of Athens. Here, against a numerically superior Persian army, the Athenian hoplites, aided by a small contingent from Plataea, won a stunning and unexpected victory. The Battle of Marathon was a significant blow to Persian prestige and demonstrated that the formidable Persian military machine was not invincible against disciplined Greek heavy infantry. It became a legendary moment for Athens, bolstering its confidence and reputation. The defeat at Marathon did not end Persian ambitions in Greece. Rather, it prompted preparations for a far larger invasion. Darius began to amass a vast new army and navy, but his death in 486 BCE left the execution of this grand campaign to his son and successor, Xerxes I Xerxes. After quelling revolts in Egypt and Babylonia that had broken out upon his father's death, dedicated himself to fulfilling Darius's plans for the subjugation of Greece. He assembled an immense multinational army, drawn from all corners of the empire, and a massive fleet. Ancient sources, particularly Herodotus, provide extraordinarily large numbers for Xerxes' forces. Though modern historians tend to view these figures as exaggerated, the invasion force was undoubtedly the largest seen in the region up to that time. In 480 BCE, Xerxes launched his invasion. His army crossed the Hellespont, the modern Dardanelles, on a remarkable bridge of boats and advanced through Thrace and Macedon into Greece. A small coalition of Greek city-states, led by Sparta and Athens, resolved to resist. The initial encounters highlighted the disparity in numbers. At the narrow pass of Thermopylae, a small Greek force, famously spearheaded by 300 Spartans under King Leonidas, made a valiant stand, delaying the Persian advance for several days before being outflanked and annihilated. Following this, Boeotia fell to the Persians, and Athens itself was evacuated and subsequently captured and burned by Xerxes' troops. From the Persian perspective, the campaign initially appeared to be proceeding successfully, with much of northern and central Greece under their control. Despite the initial successes of Xerxes' grand invasion and the destruction of Athens, the tide began to turn against the Persians in the latter part of 480 BCE. The strategic naval battle of Salamis, fought in the narrow straits near Athens, resulted in a decisive victory for the allied Greek fleet. The confined waters negated the Persian numerical advantage and superior maneuverability of the smaller, more agile Greek triremes. This defeat was a critical blow to Xerxes, as it compromised his seaborne supply lines and the prestige of his navy. Concerned for his communications and fearing being trapped in Greece, Xerxes opted to withdraw with a significant portion of his army back to Asia, leaving his general Mardonius in command of a still formidable force to continue the campaign. The following year, 479 BCE, the Greek coalition led by the Spartans confronted Mardonius at the Battle of Plataea in Boeotia. The Greeks achieved another comprehensive victory, and Mardonius himself was killed. On or around the same day, the Greek fleet reportedly destroyed the remnants of the Persian fleet at Mycale, off the Ionian coast. These twin defeats effectively ended Persian ambitions to conquer mainland Greece. While the Greco-Persian Wars marked a halt to Persian expansion into Europe, it is crucial to understand that they did not signify the collapse or immediate decline of the Achaemenid Empire itself. Persia remained the dominant power in the Middle East and Anatolia for another century and a half. Its vast resources, sophisticated administration, and formidable military capacity continued to make it the superpower of its age. Although direct conquest of mainland Greece was abandoned, Persia continued to exert considerable influence over the Greek city-states through diplomacy, financial subsidies to favored factions, often playing one city-state against another, and the assertion of its authority over the Greek cities of Anatolia. This influence was notably demonstrated by the King's Peace, or Peace of Antalcidas, in 387 BCE, where the Persian king Artaxerxes II effectively dictated terms to the warring Greek states, reasserting Persian control over Ionia and Cyprus. Internally, the later Achaemenid period saw periods of stability and prosperity, as well as increasing challenges. Succession struggles, court intrigues, and occasional rebellions in powerful satrapies like Egypt, which managed to regain independence for periods, did strain the empire's resources and cohesion. Figures like Artaxerxes III Ocus were known for their ruthlessness in reasserting central control. Yet, the administrative framework established by Darius largely endured, and the empire continued to facilitate trade and cultural exchange across its vast territories. The ultimate demise of the Achaemenid Empire came not from internal collapse alone, but from the rise of a new, formidable military power in Macedon. Philip II of Macedon unified the Greek states partly under the pretext of a pan-Hellenic war of revenge against Persia. His son, Alexander the Great, inherited this mission and, beginning in 334 BCE, launched his astonishingly successful invasion of the Persian Empire. In a series of brilliant campaigns, Alexander defeated the Persian armies at the Granicus River, Issus, and Gaugamela, leading to the death of the last Achaemenid king, Darius III, and the fall of Persepolis. Despite its conquest by Alexander, the legacy of the Persian Empire was profound and enduring, particularly in the Middle East and Anatolia. The Achaemenids had created the first truly universal empire, uniting diverse peoples under a relatively stable and tolerant administration. Their innovations in governance, including the satrapy system, standardized coinage, the royal road, and the use of Aramaic as an official language, profoundly influenced subsequent empires in the region, including Alexander's own successors and later Roman, Parthian, and Sasanian states. Their monumental art and architecture, particularly at Persepolis and Susa, remain testaments to their grandeur. The concept of a divinely sanctioned multicultural empire that respected local customs pioneered by Cyrus and Darius left an indelible imprint on the political and cultural landscape of the ancient world, shaping the history of the Middle East and Anatolia for millennia.